Hello, welcome to another video with Happy Histories with Michael. And at the moment we're actually in CharterHouse Square. We are on consecrated ground because this square here was in fact a plague pit during the 1340s and 50s, when of course the Black Death visited these isles. But the man who actually bought this land was a nobleman called Sir Walter de Manny, and he was actually born in Hainault, and he was actually a page, a servant to Philippa of Hainault. Now, in the fullness of time, Philippa of Hainault married Edward III, so he came over here, and then he went on to become a soldier, a very seasoned soldier. He fought in Scotland, and he fought in France, and is in fact in Calais where his better nature comes to light, because when they besieged Calais, the people hadn't given up initially, and of course when that happens they were given terms, and the terms were the burghers, the noblemen of Calais, must come out with a rope around their neck because they were going to be hung, and the keys of the city. But Sir Walter, he besieged the king. He said, look, we're here fighting in France, and if we treat them cruelly, if our people are captured, it'll be an eye for an eye and it'll never end. Rubbish, said Edward. But his wife Philippa, she was expecting a child, and she said, look, it's an ill omen if whilst I'm carrying the heir to the throne, you were to kill these people. So he relented, and they were given their lives. And actually there's a statue in the gardens next to the Houses of Parliament by Rodin, which commemorates this event. Anyway, in the 1340s, of course, the plague visited London, and Sir Walter de Manny, he bought this area here, and a church was placed here, and I love the name of the church. It was the Church of the Holy Salutation of the Mother of God. I think I've got that right. And in the fullness of time, so this was sanctified ground. There was about 5,000 bodies laid to rest here, very reverently, and in this chapel people would pray for the souls of the departed. But then Sir Walter and the Bishop of London wrote to Clement VI and asked him if they could establish a monastery here. So then a monastery on this ground over here was established, a monastery of Carthusian monks. And from that date, the 1370s, until the Reformation, they led a very pious life. And there are fragments of the monastery still in the building at the moment. Of course, when the Reformation came around, the building was sold off to noblemen and so forth, and the monastery was demolished, and a big Tudor stately home was built in its place. And the histories weren't terribly happy at that point. However, in 1611, a very wealthy man called Thomas Sutton, he bought this house and he established, the way that he came about his wealth was through dealing in coal. He became very wealthy in the north of England dealing with coal. And also he was in charge of the ordnance. He was the master of ordnance in the north, taking care of supplying the military with their castles and their armaments and so forth. And then, after the Reformation, the canon law on usury, there were new laws made up, and he made a fortune loaning money at interest to everybody. And he was referred to as the richest commoner in England. And there's a story that in the city of London, he had a great big treasure chest, and it was so heavy, it broke the floorboards and went down all the way to the bottom floor. So he had money to burn. And actually one of the other ways that he came into money was he married a very wealthy woman, and his wealth doubled. But when he died, he wanted to bequeath his wealth to the poor. So he established an almshouse here for 80 aged and decrepit gentlemen. The wording about how you qualify for this was quite intriguing. Aged, decrepit captains of land or sea, merchants who've fallen on hard times, and people who've been taken prisoner by the Turk. I never figured out what that meant, but my wife, may she rest in peace, she was from Morocco, a town called Salé, Rabat. And it's actually a very Spanish-looking city, because when the Moors and the Jews were thrown out of Spain, they went and they established themselves in Salé, and they pooled their resources and they bought ships, and they had European captains who went all along the seas and they captured people and ransomed them. So if you were ransomed, you could get free room aboard here when you're an aged gentleman. And also it was turned into a school. So we had young and the old knocking side by side. And that tradition is running strong to this day. The school in the late 1800s was moved out to Surrey. But there are still aged gentlemen here. And at one point they were all gentlemen, and they were referred to as the brothers. And they had to be of good character. They had to attend church daily on pains of a fine. That, of course, has gone by. And there were all sorts of people. They're real characters. So there are tours that you can go on here, either by guides, like myself. I was a guide here at one point. Or you can have a tour by one of the brothers, one of the residents. And actually, they've opened it up to ladies as well now, so elderly ladies go there as well. But they're still referred to as brothers. They may be female, but they are brothers. And they have 3 meals a day in their grand hall. And it's great. They have a really social, good social life here. It's a great way to spend the autumn of your life. I came unstuck, actually, one time, because I was very naughty, and I was cycling over this consecrated ground. And I met one of the brothers on his motorized wheelchair, and he told me off. He lifted me out of it. Anyway, other features of the building, I don't know if you can zoom in on it, but on that further building, right at the apex of the roof, is a dog. And this is an extinct breed now. It's called the Talbot, and this was the heraldic arm of Sir Thomas Sutton. And it really is so atmospheric. And one of the ways that this building makes it earns an income is by doubling as a film set. So if you've seen Downton Abbey, you have seen the inside of Charterhouse. If you've seen Horrible Histories, you've seen the inside of Charterhouse. But Horrible Histories are the enemy. We are Happy Histories. But there's one thing I really want to show you. So if you follow me. Now, Actually, of course, when the monastery was dissolved, it was pretty well knocked down and rebuilt as a Tudor mansion. And then also, actually, during the Second World War in 1940, it was bombed and it was damaged very severely. Thankfully, all of the brothers had been moved out so that there was no loss of life. But, you know, the damage was quite extensive. But it really worked out very well because everybody knew that Sir Walter de Manny was buried on the premises. And Thomas Sutton, in fact, in the chapel here, he is buried there as well. But they'd lost Sir Walter. But when the bombs had demolished certain areas, and the people who were, you know, redesigning and trying to figure it out, they noticed over there on that wall that peculiar shaped, it almost looks like a large mouse hole above that window. And that's what's called a squint. And a squint was usually above the altar. And they knew that Sir Walter de Manny had been buried in front of the altar because at his burial, the king was there, John of Gaunt was there, all of the great and the good of the land. So they knew where, and then they discovered that squint. So they figured that must be where the high altar was. So they dug just there where that marble tomb is, and they discovered Sir Walter. And they knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was Sir Walter, because Sir Walter was buried with a lead seal of a papal bull that he had received from Clement VI. And, you know, they took him out, and they needed to reinter him. You know, the Germans had disturbed him, and they wanted to reinter him. And he was laid to rest there. And in fact, the pallbearers, they received the same tip, allowing for inflation, that the pallbearers had been given at the original burial. And so there he rests now. So may Sir Walter and Sir Thomas rest in peace. This is well worth a visit. You're in for a real treat if you come and visit us. Thank you.